Hello, welcome back. Part two here on Sheffield Live TV. Time seems to fly when, well, sometimes you're enjoying yourself, even through this period. It's our fourth show of the lockdown, courtesy of Zoom, courtesy of our producer, Greg. Thanks to Sheffield Wednesday's Kadeem Harris, who I chatted to in part one. Now in part two, we're sort of spreading the net far and wide. Delighted to welcome James Gregg, of course, as usual. John Helm, the iconic television commentator, joins us as well. And so does Alex Miller, who's been on the show before, journalist, Al's writer from the Sheffield Star, whose fiancée is right in the NHS front line, and he's trying to help her and her colleagues with some fundraising efforts. First of all, guys, who's desperate for a hairdresser? John, what about you?
Oh, are you joking or what? Taking over. Guys, it's funny you should mention that, Alan. It is the first thing on my wish list. Please, 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 will some hairdressers open so I can cut this mane? It's horrendous.
They should be key workers, shouldn't they? Hey, never mind a hairdresser for Alex. I mean, you just need a sort of a beard dresser there, mate.
Hey, there's a fair bit come off this beard, I'll have you know. Yeah, I'm starting to take the plunge. I've actually linked in with the charity efforts that I'm doing, so yeah, it feels a bit weird having my hair off. I usually like my hair nice and long, but yeah, there we have it.
Before we get down to the sport, let's find out how lockdown's been treating everybody. John, have you learned any new skills? Have you got anything done unexpectedly in the Helm household as a result of this?
My wife is taking out revenge for 50 years of neglect, and if the door behind me opens and she's got a paintbrush in her hand, will you warn me, please? I've already done out 2 garden huts, 1 study, 1 garage. I've been cutting the lawn, watering the plants, and would you believe this, even reduced to ironing. How sad is that? I've always believed that journalists and broadcasters should be exempt from household chores, partly because we're completely useless. I don't know about you, Alan. You look in your mansion there as though you're probably quite a tiny person. I am absolutely hopeless at anything that involves my hands.
I've done nothing, mate. I've done nothing. It's all been, I work hard to pay for it, shall we say. That's what I've done over the years. I haven't put a shelf up or anything. James, you'll be the same.
Yes, I think I am, but I think that's partly because I'm not trusted with doing anything more than through want of doing it. Also, touching on the hair thing, I'm quite envious. If I should cut my hair like Alex has there, I think I'm just worried mine wouldn't come back at all. So that's why I've not sort of done a DIY job yet.
You don't need James.
You don't need to do a Bobby Charlton yet, James. You know, but it's coming. You keep working at it. It's coming. You'll be in Kes before you know it. The film Kes. You might have seen that. John, all things sport have ground to a halt. It's been frustrating. It's been unprecedented, unimaginable. What's it been like for you? And do you think any positives will come of this in terms of our attitude to sport and the way sport conducts itself?
Yeah, funnily enough, the very first week of it, I had the feeling that in the long term, we might get a dose of reality back, particularly in terms of football, not so much the other sports, I don't think. Most of us have used the phrase about football that it's been lunatic, that it's been obscene in terms of wages, that they don't live in a real world, these footballers. And I'm not knocking them for that. They go with the current market, don't they? And if somebody's going to offer you 20 million a week, you're going to take it, or whatever it might be, some crazy figure anyway. So I do think that they are just gradually coming around to realise that those days are gone. Those days are completely gone. I'm not even sure how the Football League will look when we come back. We don't know what clubs are going to survive this. Non-league clubs, are they going to manage? So I don't know whether that's good or it's not good, obviously. If clubs go out of business, that's terrible. But I do think that we needed a real dose of reality, a reawakening, and that might just happen. This could be the catalyst.
Yeah, because there's such a thin margin that these clubs have not prepared for any kind of loss of income, have they? I mean, businesses should build in some kind of fail-safe, shouldn't they? Football never has. The
Well,
figures
it's
are quite.
funny, isn't it? Accrington Stanley's chairman seems to become somebody to follow in this, really, in that he has insisted that their club keeps their head above the water no matter what, and they'll probably emerge from it okay because he's kept his house in order. Whereas others we know have just run up millions of pounds worth of debt, because the salaries exceed the income completely. And so it's a salutary lesson, I think, for all of us to learn. And it isn't just football. I said that football is the one that's highlighted most of all, but I really am optimistic about the future. I think things go in cycles, and I think provided we come through this, survive it, I think we will benefit in the long run.
Andy Holt is the chairman of Accrington Stanley, and does make a lot of sense. And you say it's not just maybe the inside of the sport to blame. I don't know, guys, whether Alex and James, you'd agree with me. We're all a little bit to blame. Fans are to blame for the forever banging on about the next ambitious signing. They regard millions of pounds as monopoly money, as if it's just fantasy. And us in the media were forever praising clubs who show ambition and criticising chairmen, for instance, who are perceived to lack ambition. So I think, aren't we all a little bit to blame for this?
I think what's quite amusing is that, I mean, this was the most telling thing, and probably the closest thing that I can probably relate it to at the moment, is I've been watching, I watched that Sunderland Till I Die documentary, the second season, where Stuart Donald and Charlie Methven, they come in, and essentially in the first sort of few episodes, I'm sort of doffing my cap to them, because they're basically plugging all the leak holes where the club was previously just wasting money on things that really the club didn't need to be spending it on. And they were sort of plugging all those gaps, and they sort of cut all the costs down by about 50%, I think, in the end. And the club was in a much better place for it. Yes, they weren't willing to splash out and sort of offer ridiculous wages like they had previously done. But the danger of doing that was that then the club would then fall back into the same trap it had always been. The temptation is there, particularly if you're an owner or a chairman and you've got lots of money yourself, and you probably think, well, I could probably just do that, and I probably could just pay them that. And then I know there's lots of other problems at Sunderland, so it's probably not the best example. But I just thought that was very amusing, the fact that the fans turned on them when they weren't getting the results. And I just thought, these guys have plugged all the gaps when you were wasting money. And yeah, the results haven't been to their taste. And I know ultimately as a fan, that's probably what you worry about the most. But if they hadn't done that, there was a very real possibility that Sunderland wouldn't have been existing in 3 or 4 years' time. So actually, I think you're right. Fans are to blame.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, John, you've seen it close up for many, many years before we bring Alex into this, for many years. And you've seen the way that we all react when clubs excitingly spend a lot of money on players. And it's not just current era, is it? It goes back a long, long way. There's nothing like a big signing to get us all excited. And we've not got a negative word for it, have we, John, in the media?
No, you're right, Alan. I mean, I go back to Trevor Francis being the first £1 million player, and we couldn't believe that. I could even go back to Alf Common, the first £1,000 player a long time ago. No, I always remember going to York City and being horrified by a player who was just signing, and he said, well, I need a loyalty bonus. He hadn't even signed yet. He said, I'll be moving on in 12 months. Why should he get that sort of bonus? And I've a great deal of respect for Danny Murphy and the things he writes. But he made a telling comment the other week where he said that players really deserve rewarding for playing matches if you play so many matches. Well, I'm sorry. You get paid for the number of matches you go to cover. I cover about 100 and something games a season. I don't get an extra bonus because I cover so many matches. They're just doing their jobs, aren't they? But you're right, we all have a part to play in this. And even, dare I mention, for me, a dirty word, agents. I think they have a big part to play in this as well. They've got to stop building up all these transfer rumours so that their players can vie one against the other and just get the biggest deal going. Because we all know why, because the agents take a massive, great cut out of this. But you're right, there we apportion blame. We've got to start at home with ourselves and with the media as well as with the club chairman who pay out these ridiculous amounts.
Absolutely. Okay, Alex, obviously you cover Sheffield Wednesday, but specifically, we want to talk about your fiancée, Naomi, which is a bit unusual, as I never mention my wife by name, and John, her indoors at Helm land, she doesn't get a mention either. But Alex, there's a special reason for it, and we're all indebted, and we're all applauding quite rightly every Thursday the NHS army, and it is an army who face danger on a daily basis. And your fiance's one of those great people. Tell us more.
Yeah, she is. She's right on the front line as well. She's working on a COVID ward, a hot ward as they're called. I actually live quite a long way out of Sheffield. I'm a couple of hours away. I'm up in Shildon in West Yorkshire. And then she works at Airedale Hospital, which is a more rural sort of hospital. It's not maybe under the exactly the same strains as some of those in Sheffield and some of the bigger cities in Yorkshire. But yeah, sort of over the last few weeks, obviously seen the strains that they've come under, and obviously with a personal point of view on Naomi and how she's doing. And yeah, I think the strains of the NHS, and it can be a bit of a political debate, really, can it, about how that's funded and how well it's funded. But it's under a hell of a lot of strain anyway. But certainly this has sort of laid bare the difficulties that they've had over the last few weeks.
Yeah, and so obviously you're supporting her, and she's coming home each day. And how is she reacting to it? How is she bearing up to it? And I know that we'll come on in a moment to efforts that you're going to make to try and support the NHS. But how is it affecting your lives?
Well, massively, as you can imagine. Luckily I'm still working, so that's sort of keeping me busy. But the nature of an NHS shift pattern, particularly with how things are, is it's all over the place. She's doing, a run of 3 nights, and then she's on days, which, in any sort of normal time would really put a strain on her, and emotionally and sort of physically as well. I've been incredibly proud of her. This is just one of tens or hundreds of thousands of nurses on the front line, and doctors and care workers, physios, but yeah, incredibly proud of. She just seems to have found something else inside of her, in terms of, it's been built up as a war effort, as a national crisis, and yeah, she's doing incredibly well. Look, it's taken its toll. She's come from a night shift last night, and got in from work and was quite poorly. She threw up, just out of exhaustion and all the rest of it. And there's question marks over whether she'll be going in for a shift this evening. But yeah, that's sort of the first time it's happened. And as I say, incredibly proud of how tough that she's been. It's brought something else out inside of her, as I say.
John, guys, this is the real world that we're being protected from at the moment. And we're so grateful, aren't we? We have to be. That these people are taking risks.
Very much so, Alan. I've always said for many, many years, if there was a person out there who could equate what we're all worth, we would be way down the list. The surgeons who save lives, the people who work in the hospital who care for us, they're the people who really should get the remuneration. With all due respect to the rest of us, our jobs are almost like hobbies, aren't they? We love what we do, but we're not saving lives. My own wife has a brother and a sister who both suffer from dementia. Now, this is a terribly worrying time for them, because, of course, they rely on contact with people. When they can't have that contact, they wonder why, and they get more and more confused. And we know a lot of people are dying in care homes as well. And these are just horrid, horrendous times that none of us could have anticipated possibly. But I think it has brought into stark realization the value of those people who are out there and who are saving lives. And I can't praise them highly enough. There isn't a word that is adequate enough to thank the work that's gone on over the past few weeks. And I think we've all come to realise where we stand in the pecking order to a certain extent.
Completely agree with that. Echo those sentiments, John. Incredible work, really. And I can't quite fathom, imagine that, from what you just described, Alex, from Naomi's perspective, being absolutely exhausted and having the mental and physical, drain. But it also sort of brings it back to what you were saying at the start of this segment, Alan, about perspective in sport, because I think, you know, a dull 0-0, you know, we might have whinged at and whatever. I think we'll probably, I mean, I might stand corrected, but I think we'll probably be a bit more tolerant of things. You know, I think we'll have a bit more perspective of a dull 0-0 or a bad, you know, sending off or whatever it is. So I think, you know, there are positives to take from it. But yeah, amazing work that's been done by all.
Great point. Yeah, indeed. We all have bad days, and we're very intolerant of each other when we have them, and we shouldn't be to the extent that we are. Just before we move on to Alex's fundraising efforts, which involves a lot of fun, in particular for Sheffield Wednesday fans. But obviously, John, it brought it home to you when a great friend and you know, a legendary player of Leeds United and England, Norman Hunter, passed away a few days ago. I had the pleasure of knowing him a bit. A wonderful man. I know you knew him very, very well indeed.
I've known Norman over 50 years, and I can genuinely, honestly say I've met thousands of people, and there was hardly anybody I knew who was friendlier, more down to earth than Norman Hunter. My vivid recollection of him always will be, he set off from 20 yards away towards you with his arm outstretched, with a beaming smile, and you knew you were going to get an absolutely bone cruncher of a handshake. He was made of teak, was that man, and always the words, "How are you, pal?" And he never changed from that. Honestly, he was one of the nicest blokes, and what an anomaly, because some people would have said, well, he was an assassin on the pitch. So his opponents, including Franny Lee, in particularly Franny Lee, wouldn't have agreed with that. But honestly, as a human being, he was one of the best, one of the nicest.
Yeah, indeed. Always had time for you. Always that welcoming smile and a great deal of warmth and real love.
And a good player, Alan. A very, very good player. You don't play 700 and odd games for one club and play for your country over 20 times without being an exceptionally talented footballer.
Indeed. The late and lamented Norman Hunter. Coming back to you, Alex. This week we had an anniversary. It was an anniversary of a game I remember very well. It was Wembley in April of 1991, and Sheffield Wednesday won the League Cup by beating Manchester United by a John Sheridan goal to nil. Now, you're going to have fun with this as well as fundraise with this, I think, in a few days' time.
So next week the idea is on the Star, our Sheffield Wednesday dedicated Facebook page. I'm going to run 5 live broadcasts across 5 evenings with the hope of collecting donations of £5. So the first one is going to be a Sheffield Wednesday quiz. I did one a few weeks ago and it seemed to go down well. So we'll do a similar thing, you know, all bells and whistles with a picture round and all the rest of it. And then on the Tuesday, which I'm glad to be able to announce, and Alan, I'm hoping it's something that you're going to be able to help me out with as well. We're going to do a watch along of the 91 Cup final. So it'll be 29 years and 1 week on. It's, you know, there's going to be yourself. We've got Chris Turner confirmed. We've got Phil King as well, who's the left back obviously that day. And hopefully a couple of others that will join us, and we'll settle down, we'll watch it, and you know, I'll ask questions of an experienced journalist like yourself that was there on the day, and your memories of that run and that team, and the players, of course, themselves, will hopefully give us a bit of insight into the match itself, the celebrations, of course, which the Star have touched on with Phil King, that sound quite like they got out of hand at one point, I think. But yeah, and touch on what was you know, one of the really great Sheffield Wednesday teams. Later in the week, I'm hoping to get down with the kids a bit, and we're going to host a FIFA game between Sheffield Wednesday and Sheffield United. They've both got semi-professional FIFA players, believe it or not, that represent them, and we're going to host that. I'm going to host a watch-along, similarly, of the 2005 League One playoff final. Guest to be confirmed, but I'm hoping to have at least 3 players from that day as well, including a real Owls icon, so a little bit of a clue there. And then, yeah, just then another one with potentially a couple of goalkeepers from Sheffield Wednesday past. So I've got a prize that's been very kindly donated by the club. It's a signed match-worn Sheffield Wednesday shirt. And all I ask is, if you enjoy any of the broadcasts, and you donate a fiver to a Just Giving page that I've set up, and you'll be put into the hat, and we'll draw the winner of that shirt on Sunday next week.
Excellent. Look forward to that very much indeed. We'll bring John in a moment to talk about any memories he might have of Sheffield Wednesday's League Cup triumph in 1991. First, James, I'm asking the impossible of you, mate, at the moment. You usually round up the region's sport, and there ain't any, so I know you're an inventive sort of chap. So what's going on?
Well, my inventivity skills are slightly depleted this week, I'm afraid to say. There is absolutely nothing going on at all. I mean, nothing. And we've talked about Sheffield FC last week. They were raising funds for the NHS, auctioning off some really cool items, actually. And I think that is still continuing. They seem to have auctioned off a lot of their sort of memorabilia and things, obviously. The world's oldest football club. So you can imagine they've got some great relics locked away in their clubhouse or stashed away at people's houses. And they've managed to auction off some of those, and they've raised, over £2,000, I believe, from auctioning off, some old footballs from way back when, some old shirts, some old photographs, etc. So that's a really good effort from them. Lots of clubs are doing similar. Lots of clubs are also showing old replays and live tweeting matches, particularly on a Saturday. Helm FC revisiting some of their finer glory days up at Sandygate, and sort of old photos being sent in of certain matches, etc. So those things do rumble on, those things do continue, but I think, like we spoke about a few weeks ago, Alan, the non-league clubs are really struggling because, they've still got FA bills to pay. I don't think there's been any kind of agreement to defer payments for subscriptions and sort of league entry fees and all that kind of thing. I don't think there's been any agreement to defer those yet. So that's there's still expenses. There's clubhouse expenses. There's obviously upkeep of the ground and whatnot. So it's very, very difficult time for all of them. I think they're just all absolutely dying for a big charity match of some kind. When this all blows over.
Let me bring John on that, because John's very close to Bradford Park Avenue. Club he's supported over the years. Might even be on the board or president or something like that, John. But hard times.
Yeah, I am the vice president, and I've been proud to be so, Alan, for a long time. I started following us in 1953. And of course, these really are tough times, and the handout that we're going to get is minimal. It really is. And although we don't pay big wages, which is reflected in our league position this season, we are a genuinely honest and a good club, well run. And we have a philanthropic owner, thank goodness. We're trying to get a 3G pitch sorted. We've got permission for that. We've all sorts of plans to improve the ground. But just the day-to-day running, people don't appreciate, what it is. And of course, the lads who also have other jobs as well, they love their football, and they would play 3 or 4 times a week if they had to do. So all this talk about the pros, we can't play this, we wouldn't be fit for that. I found that strange, because our lads are just genuine footballers. But as has just been said, the non-league clubs at this moment in time are going through a horrendous period without any publicity whatsoever. People talk about the team down in Jersey who should have been promoted because they'd already won the league, basically. We feel for them, of course we do. South Shields is another one. We feel for them, but we have to look at the greater picture. And it's a question of survival of the fittest at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's in the whole game's interest to keep all these clubs alive. And I hope the ones that have the most resources do react to this danger and do help them along. John, it's been a pleasure as always. James, thanks very much indeed. Alex, good luck with the venture, the fundraising venture.
Yeah, good luck,
just finally, one of the I suppose pluses from this huge minus is we've all managed to relive some of these great games. There's not just the 91 Sheffield Wednesday game, John. There's also, as a Chesterfield supporter, I wallowed in the 97 FA Cup semi-final last weekend against Middlesbrough, which I'm sure you remember almost as clearly, or perhaps more clearly than I do.
Oh, I certainly do. I remember all of those. I remember Chesterfield, certainly at Wembley, and I remember the semi-final against Middlesbrough at Old Trafford. David Ellery made a bad mistake. Chesterfield should have won that match. There's absolutely no question about that. and a horrible moment in the replay at Hillsborough where every commentator in the ground got the half-time score wrong.
Yes.
That's another story, is that?
Juninho scored.
That's correct.
Yeah, and
ran down the touchline, Alan, ran into Brian Robson's arms, up on the scoreboard 2-0. Half-time came, Martin Tyler, myself, 2-0. It is to Middlesbrough, blah, 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 blah. And the floor manager ran up and said it's only 1-0. I went, what? He said the goal was disallowed and a free kick was given on the centre spot. So that's why we'd never noticed it. But they kicked off on the centre spot with a free kick, which looked like a restart of the game. So
it was the most bizarre. One
of the worst moments ever.
Ever, absolutely, John. Thanks very much for recalling that and other memories and for being on with us. It's always a pleasure. Great to see you. Thank you as ever to James. And thank you to Alex. I look forward to linking up with you in a few days. Thank you as well to Karim Harris in part 1 of Sheffield Wednesday. And thank you to you for watching. We'll be back in some form or other next week. I hope. See you then.